This is Do You Know Jack, the podcast. Your host, Jack Antonio, speaking at you directly from the shores of the North Saskatchewan River, right here in slushy Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. And on the line with me today, special treat because I have the one and only Dave Gunning, who has released his 12th studio record, Up Against the Sky, as of March 8th. How you doing, Dave?
Great, Jack. You said slushy out there. Is it the? It was damn cold a couple weeks ago. No
Yeah,
slush when I was out there.
yeah. Well, I think you did a bit of a Saskatchewan run just a few weeks ago, and I thought I read that you were down in Humboldt actually on March 8th,
Yeah.
which is when your record would have released.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And I have a song about hockey that I wrote a few years ago with David Francie called "A Game Going On," and I knew that when I got to Humboldt that I'd have to sing it.
Yeah.
It would be pretty obvious if I avoided it. And so yeah, it was just trying to find the right words to. People are obviously still greatly affected by it, but wanting to move forward there, and it was very powerful. The green room where they had us hanging out had all kinds of plaques and banners and artwork hanging up on the walls everywhere. And it was like a museum just filled with tributes to victims of the bus crash. It was powerful.
Yeah, no doubt. I think you're referring to your song that was part of the Hockey Night in Canada Song Quest. That's the one, right?
Yeah, it came out on a record called No More Pennies.
Right.
That's the one that got me in trouble with the Royal Canadian Mint years ago. And then people were saying, "Why don't you send your song in there?" There's a song quest in search for Canada's next great hockey song.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, maybe it's going to be kind of cheesy to do that. And David Francie didn't want to have any part of it either. And then my manager said, "Piss on you guys! I'm sending it in anyway." He did, and it made the top 100. Then it made the top 50. Then it made the top 10. And then did we friggin' win it? It was crazy. So we had a nice little trip to Lloydminster, and they used our song for the opening montage of a Montreal versus Toronto Maple Leafs hockey game. And
Oh,
I
there
flew
you
home and
go.
watched from the family couch. It was awesome.
No doubt. Well, man, like just being in Humboldt so soon after that tragedy, I don't even know what I would have said in that moment. I mean, you know?
Yeah, it was hard to sort of know exactly how to address it, but I basically just, um, just basically, respectfully sing this as a tribute, and that's how I approached it.
Yeah. Did you manage to meet up with any family members of the hockey players? I mean, was there anything like that?
Were a couple of people at the show who had two hockey players living with them,
Uh-huh.
and they were just minutes behind the bus crash and
Oh my goodness.
one of the first people to come across it. So they were, yeah, they've definitely had a had trouble with it for sure, but they and everybody seemed to kind of enjoy it, and they sang along, and it was fine. I was really worried about it though for days. Just how what am I going to say, but
Yeah.
they're so that's such a friendly little town. I find, well, I always thought Albertans were friendly, and they are, and then until you get to Saskatchewan. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was born and raised in the Vancouver area, and then I went to the University of Regina, which is sort of how I ended up living in Saskatchewan. And it's a different culture out here. I mean, the prairie culture of people depending on each other through harvest and through harsh weather, and sometimes through hard time, sometimes through hard economic challenges. I mean, I would imagine that's not unlike where you're from, out east in Pictou County.
It does feel a lot like the East Coast there. I find that there's a similar sense of humor, and maybe that just comes from having survived. Like we were driving just for hours on the prairies and wondering, like, how did people heat their, how did they stay warm years ago? It's just it's amazing that people survived, and well, and yeah, I just always find that we get treated so well out there.
For sure, yeah. Now, like before I hit record, you were telling me that you had a rather unique experience, I guess, for lack of a better word. Speaking of hockey songs, working with the great Stompin Tom Connors.
Yeah, that was, yeah, 2002. I did one tour with him. I played upright bass for him,
Uh huh.
and yeah, just the experience of a lifetime for sure. We remained friends. We stayed close, and I'd visit him from time to time and call him from time to time, and it was always like calling your grandparents' house or something. Except your grandparents that wanted to get you drunk all the time. He'd say, I'm keeping tabs on you, boy. I ain't wrote in Alberta. Keep her going. Keep her going. When are you gonna come see me? But the problem was, if you wanted to see Tom, you had to have the next day off. But I would go visit him. And he was what a character, just brilliant.
Yeah, I can remember just as a young fella now, my parents had an old 8-track that had the song My Stomping Grounds on it, the one where he
Oh
rolls through
yeah,
all of
yeah.
the provinces. And I mean, that's a song that's, resonated with me my entire life. I mean, what's your go-to Stompin' Tom jam? I know, you also frequently, stitch Stompin' Tom Connor's songs into your set list too, right?
Yeah, for sure. I sing a few of them. My favorite Stompin' Tom song lately has been "The Bridge Came Tumbling Down," and I haven't learned it. I don't know all the words, but that's when yeah, I like cranking that one up. That's a great song. He's got so many though.
That's
And
about the collapse
Songbird,
of the Second Narrows Bridge in Vancouver, right?
exactly. Yeah, what a powerful song. And Songbird Valley is a beautiful song too. JP Cormier and I just recorded that one on a record that we did together a couple of
Oh
years ago,
wow.
and it's a beautiful song.
Now I lived in the north for a while too, and I think there's one. Is it the Martin Hartwell story? Where he's like lost up in no man's
Yep.
land. I
Yeah.
love that one too. Being in the north, the of course the weather is extremely harsh, and the living conditions. It's dark, and you can feel a little isolated and lonely. And I always felt like, not necessarily the lyrics, but just the tone of the melody, like just the notes that he chose when he was writing,
Oh
really
no.
capture the north quite
Yeah.
perfectly.
Oh yeah. You have to wear long underwear when you listen to that one. I find that's what I find too. It just makes you feel like you're there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now you were inspired to first write. You saw John Allan Cameron and of course also the great Stan Rogers way back in 1981. I mean, like, is this where the sort of storytelling aspect of your writing style comes from, or?
I'd have to think it is. It's the first live concert that I ever experienced, and then I rediscovered Dan Rogers' music when I went to university, and I always listened to John Allen Cameron growing up too. And I played bass guitar for John Allen in the late '90s,
Oh wow.
and when his bass player was out on the road with Natalie McMaster, and he recommended me for the gig. And John Allen was an awesome guy. He really was uh, good, a good friend too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just fortunate to yeah, I feel like I've been so lucky to work with a couple of my heroes there, and but yeah, Stan. I mean, I always remembered seeing him, and I rediscovered his music when I went to university, and I was in Halifax studying commerce,
Uh-huh.
and just missing Pictou County, and missing just living in the fishing community here. And Stan's written so many songs
Right.
about that, and so I just really kind of took to it and couldn't get enough of it, and then started writing songs.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's really so pretty special thing to get to play Stanfest. I'm one of the few that get to play it every year. It's sort of my home festival, and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's definitely what sort of took me into the whole vortex of folk and Celtic music at a young age. No question.
For sure. Well, and of course, Stompin' Tom. Have you ever read his book, Stompin' Tom Before the Fame?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I read it years ago.
Yeah, it came out, I think, back in '96 or so.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that I really like, you know, is a Stompin Tom kind of, I don't know if you want to call it a trick per se, but every community that he went in and played for, especially if he was doing multiple, you know, night stands, he would make sure that he got a good gauge of the community, and he would go around and find out about, you know, other people's stories, and then, you know, next thing you know, that he would weave a song about the community into a set list. And that's how there's so many great Stompin' Tom Connors songs that people could resonate with. I mean, is that something maybe that you've picked up along the way as a songwriter and a storyteller yourself as well?
I haven't really done it to. I don't think anyone's done it to the degree Tom has.
Right.
I remember him saying, "There's not a blade of grass in this country that haven't either stumbled over or pissed on." And yeah, and he's written a song about every town that he was ever at, all these different farms that he, you know, experiences. He wrote a song for those people. That was actually the hardest part about playing with him, because he didn't know what the set list was going to be, because it depended on what town we were in. I remember JP Cormier saying, the best advice I can give you is buy a map of Ontario. Make sure you learn every song about every one of those towns. And his songs were all easy 3-chord songs, but not necessarily easy because you never know when he was going to switch chords. But he always did it the same way every time. So to him, it was math. You know, he played them the same way he recorded them. It wasn't sort of random, although it might sometimes sound random, and that was the trick with it. It was the organized randomness. And but I definitely write a lot of songs about. I mean, they say write what you know. When I'm traveling, I jot down little ideas, and I find that when I get home, you know, back home to the country here, I just, you know, that's when I hunker down and sort of write in blocks of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking now, I mentioned this off the top, but, you know, your album Up Against the Sky released March 8th. I do want to talk about a few of the songs specifically, but I think, you know, from what I've read and some of the interviews that I've seen that are out there already, is that you weren't necessarily expecting some of these tracks to maybe turn out the way they did, because in your mind you were just demoing them, right?
Yeah, it was a great way to. I mean, there was less pressure that way. Circle of Boots was the first one that I demoed, and I remember I'd only had 3 hours, and there was a little set of drums in the studio, and I didn't have time to move mics around, so I just left room mics on. I mean, the drums weren't close mic. There were 2 mics on the drums that were 12 feet away from the drums, probably.
Yeah.
But when I listened back to the tracks, that roominess. I just love the sound of it. So JP came down, listened to the stuff, and he said, "Do every song that way. Like just keep going on this theme." And I think I recorded 13 or 14 tracks, and then just picked my favorite 10. And but yeah, and it was you know, I ended up like with the upright bass, putting the upright bass on it, and the drums, and you know, the guitars I used room mics. I sang and played some of the songs at the same time, which gave me a little less ability to mess with it. You know, because the vocals and the guitars were all bleeding on the same mics. So I was left with what I had. You know, I wasn't able to kind of edit the thing to death, which maybe was probably good in the end. And a friend of mine, Mark Lang from Australia, like that Australian music was a huge influence in the making of this record, because if you listen to Aussie music, there's always this element of rust in it, where there's like something that's maybe a little out of tune, or some funky tin can sound, or something in it that's just like some ingredient of rust. And on this record, that was sort of with the roominess, or with the fact that I played a guitar that was just that almost went in the trash.
Yeah.
And just like shaking rocks and bags or whatever it took to create these different sounds.
Well, yeah, no, I mean that is interesting. I think, you know, when you get into a situation like that, right? I mean, you know, you've come up with a very authentic and organic sounding record, and I think, you know, when the record dropped on my radar, so to speak. I think that's what struck me the most, is just how honest and straightforward your songs are. And then, of course, with your storytelling approach, your listener, at least, speaking from a personal perspective, I mean, I'm right there with you in every song, and I'm sure that's probably your ultimate goal, right?
Well, that's amazing. It makes me feel so good to hear you say that. I like it's the record just came out, so we're just people are just starting to kind of discover it now,
Right.
and I've been thrilled just with the feedback out of the gate this time has been better than anything I've ever put out in the past. And a lot of the records that I put out in the past, I mean, we were sweating over them. We worked. It was like blood, sweat, and tears. And this record was just relaxed and kind of fun. And I think that maybe I've learned a valuable lesson here.
Yeah, for sure. I think one song that struck me. I mean, I was listening to the record in great detail on my walk to work today, and "The Loyal Fisherman." I mean, where do you draw inspiration for songs like this? Because I mean, like I said, you can just picture every detail of what what was taking place in the song.
I don't know where the hell that came from. To be honest, I don't know. I do know that right now there's a bleach craft mill that wants to put the effluent pipe in the Northumberland Strait, so the local fishermen are really opposed to it.
Yeah.
And I think that there's just this notion that the fishermen might get screwed over. So in that song, the fisherman, I guess his wife cheats on him, but but he doesn't really fly off the handle. Like, nobody gets hurt in the song, which is really weird. It's got this weird tension, but in the end, the house burns down because, well, there's a story in the song, but it's a crazy little twisted story. I'm not exactly sure where it came from. It was one of those ones I just wrote one night, and I played it for JP, and he loved it, and Matt Anderson loved it. I played it live at a gig one night, and Matt was there. It was at just like a jam or a buddy's garage there.
Yeah.
And he friggin' loved it. He sent me this big text like, "Man, you gotta put that out." So I did.
The other song is "Horse for Sale." I just I'm sure your experience is more East Coast, but when I listen to that song, it just resonates prairies for me.
Oh man, well, I travel all over, so I do notice farms and horses. I love old tractors and seeing old barns, and it can break your heart when you're driving through these places like that were once just filled with family farms.
Yeah.
Years ago, the exhibitions that happened all over Canada, they were better than Christmas time, and that's not the case now, right? It's, as we know, in order for these farms to make a go of it, they have to be these huge operations.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking that it's changed so much, And in the song "Horse for Sale," I wrote that with Ray Stewart, a friend of mine from home, and we were trying to figure out how would we sell this house. Well, the house isn't. Maybe if we appeal to people's emotions. So the idea was, there's a horse for sale, but you get the house and the barn too.
Yeah. I mean, not necessarily meaning to cross promote, but there a few months ago, just for the PA Herald here, I interviewed an author by the name of Dion Manisterski, and he spent a number of years just going back and forth on the prairies, taking pictures of old abandoned houses that he happened to come across, farms, churches, schools, all kinds of things. And he's got this really vivid photography of these houses that used to be basically someone's entire livelihood, their dreams and hopes and aspirations, all tied up in these houses that are now basically starting to become reclaimed by the land. Like the Canadian dream at one point was to get onto the prairies and get your land and set up your little spread and have your big family and work the land and farm it, and it's just not the case anymore. Time's marched on.
Wow, that must be a powerful visual presentation when you see his work.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. The other song I was thinking of too was Ferris Wheel. Again, the imagery in the song, you just picture yourself up there with your gal or your significant other, I suppose. And you actually referenced Motley Crue at one point too. So you know, being a metalhead, I was pretty happy for that. But I think you were you were more referencing the carny culture there, I think.
Oh yeah, no, but I grew up listening to that too. You know, we had like, yeah, you know, and of course you go to the carnivals, they'd have it just cranked. You know, whether it's Motley Crue or AC/DC or Guns N' Roses, and it'd be rattling the light bulbs and blowing out the bulbs. You know, so there'd be, or just, you know, so you imagine the Ferris wheel, it'd be a few like burnt out bulbs on it, and but yeah, that was fun writing that song.
You co-wrote a good deal of these songs too, if my information's correct. I mean, you
Yep.
know, that what was that something that you just thought now's the time to do that on a record, or is this something that
I've
you're
al-
always
I've
done?
always done that in the past. Like I find I enjoy the co-writing process. I write a lot by myself, which can be a little bit lonely. And I sometimes when I'm on touring, I play solo shows. Sometimes I have a bass player, but oftentimes the whole thing can be just kind of a lot of alone work. And the writing process is actually a time when I get to hang out with buddies, have them come stay the night, have get a few beers, and sometimes it's something that I've started that I think, you know what, I'd like to finish this with you, or sometimes you know, we start from scratch when we get together, or you know, and sometimes people will bring an idea to me. So, the co-writing process you keep your game hot, you know, and there's part of you that wants to impress the person you're co-writing with, so maybe you work a little harder. You sort of work hoping for those high five moments when you get that line that's like, yes, that's a winner, you know,
Yeah.
and keeps the momentum and the energy up. I find when you're writing.
Yeah, for sure. Now you mentioned Matt Anderson. I mean, is he somebody that might be on the bucket list to do something with, or have you done something with Matt in the past?
Matt and I have written a few songs together. He's recorded a couple of them, and I've recorded a couple of them. And but yeah, no, definitely we're always talking about getting together again. We just it has the schedules haven't aligned.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And George Canyon is also a good friend of yours.
Yeah, he's from Pictou County originally here, and we played hundreds of shows together over the years. And when he was auditioning for Nashville Star, um, he flew me to Philadelphia with him. His mother had air miles, so so I could play guitar for him for his audition.
Oh
He
wow.
he wanted to focus more on singing. He's a
Yeah,
great guitar player, you know, obviously a killer singer too, and but he wanted to focus on his singing, and I think he wanted the company too. I think he was nervous at the time, and his father had just passed away, and we're still very close. George actually took the photography for the new recording.
that's what I've heard. Yeah.
He took all the shots, yeah, and George, George is the finest kind, and you know, if we lived closer, we'd be collaborating and working together a lot more.
Yeah,
He's living in Calgary now. We get together when we have the opportunity to do it.
for sure. Yeah, I think he's coming to PA if my information's
Yes,
correct.
yeah, it's I forget what it's called, hit after hit tour or something like that.
Yeah, he's
Um,
with Doc Walker and Charlie Major
Charlie
and
Major's on that gig. Yeah, that's right.
yeah, and then there's a new guy too.
Okay.
I'm literally just looking this up on the computer now.
Well,
It's
that'll be a great tour. I know George was excited about it.
yeah, yeah,
Hit
for
after
sure.
hit tour or something like that. Well, I stayed at his place. I stayed at his place a couple of weeks ago when I was out there, and he was having a conference call with two or three of the tour managers, and they were talking about when they were going to roll and where they're going to meet,
Yeah,
and what how to figure out. They were figuring out the PA system and all the technical stuff. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, now you've been at this for you know, at least 20 years. So, I mean, I guess the operative question would be after 20 years in the business, I mean, what are some of the great pearls of wisdom and knowledge that you can share with people that are maybe looking at doing the same thing?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. Like I think one time this well-known manager in Atlantic Canada, Brooks Diamond, I was at a trip to Boston. We were playing down there, and he took me aside, and he was into the rums, and he was passionate at the time, and he just looked me in the eyes, and he said, "Do you want to know the secret? I'll tell you the secret." And he had managed the Rankins and
Yeah.
Edie McNeil and all these well-known Atlantic Canadian artists, and he worked with Anne Murray, and he looked at me right in the eyes, and he said, "The secret is persistence."
Wow.
And the way he said that was just persistence, and he kept repeating it, persistence. And I thought, wow, well, how can you argue with that?
Yeah.
You just keep going. You just keep going.
Wow.
You keep going until people can't ignore you anymore. You keep going, and I guess they say the cream will rise to the top. Keep doing your work, and just be persistent. Like, don't let anything stop you. Keep doing it.
Yeah. You know what's amazing about that is years ago when I interviewed Jan Arden for the first time, I asked her the same question, and she said, persistence is bigger than talent.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Because of course, she's somebody that kind of, finally, I think she kind of peaked a little late. She was, I think, 30 years old when she first started to find significant success. So I mean, that was her big pearl of knowledge too. So it's interesting to hear that from a different, like, more management perspective. I would agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, talent does need to factor into the picture, but because people in the business and industry are constantly being bombarded by this, that, and the other thing when it comes to music, to just make sure that you're always at the top of the heap. In this day and age, of course, it's all emails. So you always got to make sure that your email is the one that's at the top, that they see and they go, "Oh yeah, that guy." And a lot of the times that just works in your favor.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, obviously, persistence, and for me, I don't know, like, I just feel so lucky, and to be able to do it. And I know that, sure, like, you have to have some level of talent, but lots of people have talent. I think that it takes some luck, takes some persistence, and just, and for me, things kind of started to click when I thought, I'm just going to be as honest as possible, and the more honest I've been, the better things have seemed to go. So yeah, I don't know. The better things have gone smoother, I guess, since I
Right.
adopted that philosophy that I just be as honest as possible, and I don't take it for granted. But I see lots of people that are extremely talented that just things haven't kind of clicked.
Yeah.
For them, and it's heartbreaking to see that, and it's all over the place. But I've had great help over the years, and maybe I've listened to the right people, and I don't know, maybe I haven't been too pushy. I've sort of just worked at kind of quietly doing my thing, and just being persistent at it. So, but yeah, I'm fortunate to be able to do it at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, with all that being said, now that the record's out and like you said, the reviews are starting to come in, I mean, what's the next step for Dave Gunning now?
Well, I'm working. Lots of shows coming up, and still writing, and I guess still just to keep doing it, I guess. Yeah, no real nothing really complicated other than just I'm gonna keep doing it.
There you go, man. Well, Dave, listen, like I said, it's been a true pleasure and honor chatting with you today, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jack, for having me on your show. I appreciate having me on.
Right on. We'll definitely keep in touch, eh?
Yeah, sounds great, buddy.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah, see ya. Bye.